Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the greatest battles of your life will not be won by what you say, but by what you refuse to say. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to hold your peace while everything inside of you wants to fight back. Because when you stay silent, you're not weak. You're trusting the one who can fight better than you, defend stronger than you, and bless beyond what you could ever imagine. Stay with me, because in the next few moments, I'm going to show you why your silence is the key that unlocks everything God has prepared for you. And silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a strategy. When you stay silent in moments when your flesh wants to retaliate, when your pride wants to rise up, when your tongue burns to clap back, you are stepping into the posture of divine power. Sometimes the loudest sound in your life is not the noise you make, but the noise you refuse to make. There are seasons where your silence becomes your shield, and in that silence, God begins to move in ways your words never could. And you see, life will tempt you to speak before your time. People will push you, provoke you, misunderstand you, and accuse you. Your enemies will poke at your patience, waiting for you to lose your composure so they can say, "See, I knew they weren't who they claimed to be." But the strength of a champion is not always proven in how they fight back. Sometimes it is revealed in how they hold their peace. Because when you hold your peace, you create room for God to step into the situation. When you refuse to waste your energy arguing with those who never believed in you, you preserve that energy for the blessing that's on its way. And the enemy knows how to get under your skin. He knows your triggers. He knows the wounds of your past, and he knows how to stir up your emotions. But what he can outstand is your silence. Your silence confuses the adversary, because silence says, "I trust that God has already spoken on my behalf." Silence says, "I don't have to prove who I am because God has already validated me." Silence says, "My destiny is not determined by what you think of me, but by what God has ordained for me." And there is a discipline in staying silent when you want to speak. It takes more strength to shut your mouth than to open it sometimes. And that discipline opens the door for God to demonstrate his authority in your life. When the children of Israel marched around Jericho, they were instructed not to make a sound for 6 days. Imagine walking around your walls, seeing no change, saying nothing. Imagine circling your problem day after day and God telling you, "Be quiet." Sometimes God will silence you before he elevates you. Sometimes he will command your stillness before he releases your breakthrough. And when that seventh day comes, when that moment arrives, the shout that comes forth will not just be yours, but it will carry the weight of divine timing. And the reason some of us are tired is because we've been fighting battles with our mouths that God already won with his word. We waste our breath trying to explain ourselves to people who have no intention of understanding us. We drain our strength trying to defend ourselves against lies that don't even have the power to cancel our truth. Stop explaining, stop justifying, stop begging for validation from people who can't comprehend your calling. Stay silent. Let your silence be the announcement that you are not fighting on that level anymore. And when you stay silent, God begins to speak for you. He speaks in opportunities that nobody thought you deserved. He speaks in doors that open that no man can shut. He speaks in favor that follows you even in rooms where your name was slandered. They talked about you, but God still promoted you. They lied on you, but God still favored you. They tried to block you, but the silence you kept gave God the chance to move without your interference. And sometimes silence is not just about your lips, but about your spirit. It is possible to be silent outwardly while screaming on the inside. True silence is when your soul is at rest. When your heart is no longer rehearsing the offense, when your mind is no longer plotting revenge, when your spirit releases the need to control the outcome, that's when you position yourself to receive the everything God has promised. because God will not fill a heart that is cluttered with noise. He waits for you to silence the chaos so that his voice can be heard clearly. And life has a way of teaching you that your words are not always the solution. Have you ever argued and still not been understood? Have you ever defended yourself and still been accused? Have you ever explained your heart and still been rejected? That's when you realize that words don't change hearts. God does. Words don't vindicate destiny. God does. Words don't open doors. God does. And if God does it, then why are you exhausting yourself trying to do it? And every time you choose silence, you are sowing trust into God's hands. You are saying, Lord, I could speak, but I trust you to speak better than me. You are saying, Lord, I could fight, but I trust you to fight better than me. You are saying, Lord, I could try to manipulate, orchestrate, and control, but I trust you to give me what no man can take away. That is the posture that brings everything into your life. Not some things, not a portion of things, but everything. Because when God gives you everything, no man can strip it from you. And there will be seasons when silence will feel like weakness. Your pride will itch for attention. Your ego will demand that you set the record straight. But let patience have her perfect work. Let God prove what you cannot prove. Let him elevate what you cannot elevate. Let him secure what you cannot secure. Because every time you rush to defend yourself, you are indirectly saying you don't trust God to handle it. But when you stay silent, you are declaring your confidence in his sovereignty. And look at the example of the one who stood before accusers and opened not his mouth. He had the power to call down angels, to shift kingdoms with a word, and yet he chose silence. Because he knew his silence was part of his assignment. And if silence was necessary for him to fulfill his purpose, what makes you think silence won't be necessary for you? Your silence is not empty. It is pregnant with victory. And some of you are on the verge of seeing everything God promised. But the test in front of you is a test of silence. Can you keep your mouth closed when they criticize you? Can you keep your spirit still when they overlook you? Can you stay silent when every part of your flesh wants to prove them wrong? If you can master that silence, you will see blessings that words could never bring. You will see doors swing open, relationships restored, finances increase, health return, peace flood your soul. And stay silent, because silence is not losing. Stay silent because silence is trusting. Stay silent because silence is strength. And when you stay silent, God will give you everything in life that he has already written in his plan for you. Stay silent because silence is not losing. Stay silent because silence is trusting. Stay silent because silence is strength. And when you stay silent, God will give you everything in life that he has already written in his plan for you. But let me tell you something deeper. Your silence is not just a weapon. It is a seed sown into the soil of patience. And like any seed, it does not show results overnight. Seeds must be buried before they bloom. Seeds must endure the darkness of dirt before they ever see the sunlight of destiny. Your silence may feel like burying. Your silence may feel like you're being overlooked, ignored, underestimated, but in reality, you are not being buried. You are being planted. And in due season, the fruit of your silence will grow into a harvest of blessings that no one can deny. And every gardener knows that the soil has to remain still. If you keep digging, if you keep pulling up the seed to check its progress, you will kill it. The same is true for your life. If you keep speaking when God told you to stay silent, if you keep trying to explain, defend, and control, you are uprooting the very thing God is trying to grow. Silence allows God to water what you cannot see. Silence allows roots to stretch deep into the ground before before the plant ever breaks through the surface. And when the harvest comes, it will be undeniable. And the reason silence is so hard is because silence strips you of control. And we like control. We like to feel in charge of our destiny, our reputation, our image. But control is an illusion. The moment you release control and stay silent, you hand the pen back to the author who has already written your story. He knows the ending before the beginning. He knows the plot twist before you even step into the scene. And when you let him write through your silence, you discover that his script is greater than your speeches. And sometimes silence is God's way of hiding you. Think about that. Silence can be a divine shield. If people saw what was on you too soon, they would try to sabotage it. If they recognized your anointing before the appointed time, they would try to crush it. So God hides you in silence. He covers you in quietness. He lets them think you are forgotten when in reality you are being prepared. He lets them underestimate you while he is cultivating greatness on the inside of you. That silence is not rejection, it is protection. And while you are silent, listen, because silence is not just the absence of speaking, it is the presence of hearing. In the noise of life, the voice of God is often drowned out, but in the quietness of your soul, you begin to hear him clearly. You hear the whispers that guide you. You hear the direction for your next step. You hear the confirmation that you are still on track. You cannot hear destiny while shouting at your enemies. You cannot hear purpose while arguing with your critics. You cannot hear vision while explaining yourself to doubters. It is in silence that his still small voice becomes loud enough to change your entire perspective. And when you stay silent, you learn patience. And patience is not passive, it is powerful. Patience trains you to wait without frustration, to endure without complaint, to trust without evidence. Patience is the hallway between the prayer and the promise. And silence is the posture you maintain while walking down that hallway. You may not see the doors yet. You may not see the opportunities yet. But if you stay silent, you will keep walking long enough to arrive at the room God designed for you. And think about the moments in your life when you spoke too soon, when you rushed to respond only to regret it later, when you tried to justify yourself only to make the situation worse, when you tried to force a door open only to discover it wasn't meant for you. Silence saves you from unnecessary battles. Silence protects you from premature exposure. Silence delivers you from self-sabotage, because many times it's not the enemy destroying us, it's our own mouth. We talk ourselves out of blessings. We complain our way out of miracles. We argue our way out of peace. But silence keeps us safe until the right time. And you cannot clap back and climb up at the same time. If you're busy fighting with people beneath your destiny, you'll miss the ladder God placed in front of you. Silence helps you keep your hands free for climbing. Silence helps you keep your focus forward instead of backward. Silence reminds you that your assignment is bigger than your argument. And when you stay silent, God elevates you so high that the voices of your critics cannot even reach you, and your silence becomes a testimony. People will look back and say, how did they survive without fighting back? How did they make it through without defending themselves? How did they win without speaking a word? And the only answer will be, God fought for them. That testimony will speak louder than any words you could have ever said, because while you were silent, God was speaking. While you were quiet, God was loud. While you said nothing, God said everything. And there will be times when silence feels like a prison, when you feel overlooked, when you feel like your voice doesn't matter, when you feel like the world has muted you. But I came to tell you that silence is not a prison. It is a classroom. God is teaching you to trust him beyond what you can control. God is training your spirit to depend on him rather than your own ability. God is shaping your character, building your resilience, maturing your faith. Every lesson you learn in the silence prepares you for the noise of success. Because if you cannot master silence in the shadows, you will not survive the spotlight. And silence is not inactivity. Just because you are silent does not mean nothing is happening. In fact, some of the greatest moves of God happen in silence. Seeds sprout in silence. Babies grow in the womb in silence. Mountains shift under the earth in silence. And your miracle is being formed in silence. Don't confuse quiet with stillness. God may be silent, but he is never still. He is working behind the scenes, arranging the details, shifting the atmosphere, setting the stage for your breakthrough. And stay silent when they mock you, because mockery cannot stop miracles. Stay silent when they betray you, because betrayal cannot block blessing. Stay silent when they walk away, because their absence cannot cancel God's presence. Stay silent when the doors close, because closed doors are just God's redirection. Stay silent when the storm rages, because storms do not last forever. And when you hold your peace, the Prince of Peace steps into your situation. And let me remind you, silence is strength, silence is strategy, silence is faith, and faith is the currency of heaven. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. And silence is one of the purest forms of faith, because when you stay silent, you are saying, Lord, I trust you even when I cannot trace you. I believe in you even when I cannot see the evidence. I rest in you even when I cannot predict the outcome. That kind of faith moves mountains. That kind of faith opens windows of heaven. That kind of faith brings everything you need into your life. And the world says, speak up, shout back, defend yourself. But the Spirit says, stay silent and I will defend you. The world says, make noise, prove your worth. But heaven says, stay silent and I will reveal your value. The world says, fight for your place. But God says, stay silent and I will seat you in heavenly places. And stay silent, because when you do, you position yourself to receive everything God has prepared for you. Stay silent, because silence is not defeat. It is divine preparation. Stay silent, because in your quietness, heaven is at work. Stay silent and watch God give you everything in life. Stay silent and watch God give you everything in life. And the hardest part about staying silent is that it goes against your instincts. Your natural instinct wants to fight, wants to argue, wants to explain. Your flesh says, I need to let them know who I am. I need to show them they can't treat me like that. But the Spirit whispers, be still. And it takes a level of maturity to listen to the whisper over the shout. It takes a strength that doesn't come from human will, but from divine power, to stand in the fire of accusation and remain silent. And there is a weight in silence that words cannot carry. When you stay silent, you are lifting your situation into God's hands. You are shifting the battle from earth to heaven. You are saying, this is not mine to fight, this is his. And when you release it, when you really release it, you will discover that God can do more in one moment of silence than you could do in a lifetime of shouting. And think about the courtroom of life. People will sit in the gallery, watching, whispering, passing judgment. They will form opinions based on fragments of your story, not the fullness of your truth. And in that moment, everything in you wants to take the stand and defend yourself. But sometimes God will tell you, Don't say a word, because I am your advocate. I am your defender. I am your witness. I am your judge. I am your jury. And when I render the verdict, no man can appeal it. That is the power of silence. It allows God to be everything you need him to be. And your silence does not mean you don't have an answer. It doesn't mean you don't have the power to clap back. It means you've chosen a higher answer. It means you've chosen a greater power. It means you've chosen to step back so God can step in. And when God steps in, he doesn't just defend you, he elevates you. He doesn't just protect you, he promotes you. He doesn't just cover you, he crowns you. And some of you have been waiting for God to release blessings into your life, but he's been waiting for you to release your tongue. Because as long as you keep trying to talk your way out, he cannot step in. As long as you keep trying to prove yourself, he cannot prove himself through you. But the moment you go silent, the moment you surrender, the moment you say, Lord, I'm done fighting with my mouth, that's when he begins to pour out everything you've been waiting for. And silence is a test of trust. Do you trust God enough to let him handle it? Do you trust him enough to not defend yourself? Do you trust him enough to let your enemies talk while you stand in peace? Trust is not proven when everything makes sense. Trust is proven when nothing makes sense, when you can't see the way forward, when you don't understand why things are happening, when people are against you, when your name is being dragged through the mud. That's when trust speaks through silence. And when you stay silent, you protect your future, because words once spoken cannot be taken back. A sentence said in anger can destroy a relationship. A word spoken in haste can close a door forever. But silence preserves possibilities. Silence keeps doors open. Silence holds relationships together until the storm passes. Silence gives God time to work in hearts that your words could only harden. And some of you are standing in front of Jericho walls right now. You've been circling, waiting, praying, crying, wondering why nothing is moving. And God is saying, I don't need your words. I need your silence, because silence is faith in action. Silence is obedience. Silence is alignment with my timing. Don't despise the silence. It's building momentum for your shout. And when the moment comes, when God says the time is right, your shout will not just release you, it will release everything attached to you. And silence does not mean inactivity. It means intentional restraint. It means choosing wisdom over impulse, destiny over ego, faith over fear. It means you are aligning yourself with divine strategy, because the enemy thrives on chaos. He wants you loud, distracted, unfocused. He wants you so busy arguing with people that you miss the instructions of God. But silence shuts down his access. Silence denies him an entry point. Silence says, I will not let you bait me into a battle beneath me. And stay silent long enough and you will see that God's voice is louder than any rumor. Stay silent long enough and you will see that his favor is stronger than any opposition. Stay silent long enough and you will realize that his timing is better than your timing. And when his timing collides with your trust, nothing in heaven or hell can stop what he is about to do in your life. And the power of silence is not just for enemies, it is also for yourself. Sometimes you need to silence your doubts. Silence your fears. Silence the inner critic that tells you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not qualified enough. Because the loudest enemy you face is not always outside, it is inside. That voice that keeps you small, that voice that talks you out of stepping into purpose, that voice that convinces you to settle. You need silence there too. You need the silence that says, be still, soul, God is in control. And silence is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right thing. It's about holding your peace while God fights for you. It's about resting in his promises while he arranges the pieces. It's about trusting that he sees what you cannot see. He knows what you do not know. He hears what you do not hear. And because he sees, knows, and hears, he can handle what you never could. And you don't have to clap back. You don't have to prove them wrong. You don't have to show them who you are. Just keep walking in purpose. Just keep pursuing destiny. Just keep being faithful, because eventually silence produces evidence, and evidence speaks louder than arguments. Evidence cannot be denied. Evidence silences the critics. Evidence makes the mockers irrelevant. Evidence is when God blesses you so openly that the very people who doubted you have to watch his hand on your life. And stay silent, because God's plan is bigger than your pain. Stay silent, because his reward is greater than your revenge. Stay silent, because his vindication is stronger than your validation. Stay silent, because he is about to give you everything you need, everything you prayed for, everything you dreamed about, everything that belongs to you. And then when it comes, you'll understand why silence was necessary. You'll understand why he told you to hold your peace. Or understand why you had to endure without response. Because the blessing that silence brings is so great, it makes every unspoken word worth it. It makes every restrained reply worth it. It makes every moment of trust worth it. And you will look back and say, if I had opened my mouth, I would have missed this. If I had defended myself, I would have delayed this. If I had tried to fight it, I would have forfeited this. And stay silent, because silence positions you for everything God has prepared. And when he gives it, nothing and no one can take it away. Stay silent, because silence positions you for everything God has prepared. And when he gives it, nothing and no one can take it away. And there is a reason storms come with thunder and lightning. There is a reason chaos is loud. Noise is often the disguise of weakness. The loudest one in the room is usually the most insecure. The one who must always speak is often the one who fears being forgotten. But when you have confidence in God, when you know who you are and whose you are, you don't need to prove yourself with noise. Silence becomes your statement. Silence becomes your proof. Silence becomes your announcement that you are anchored in something deeper than human opinion. And the power of silence is not just in what you don't say, but in what you believe while you're not saying it. Silence is not empty. It's filled with trust, filled with expectation, filled with assurance that God is working on your behalf. Every time you hold back the urge to explain yourself, heaven records your faith. Every time you resist the temptation to argue, heaven sees your strength. Every time you choose to stay silent, you are testifying without words that you believe God is who he says he is. And your silence becomes a seed of trust that grows into a harvest of everything you've been praying for. You may not see it immediately, but just because you can't see the roots doesn't mean growth isn't happening. Roots don't make noise when they stretch, but they are laying the foundation for fruit. In the same way, your silence is producing unseen roots of character, patience, and strength. And when the fruit shows up, it will be undeniable that God was cultivating something powerful in the quiet. And think about the moments in life when you've tried to force answers with your words. You talked until you were exhausted and nothing changed. You defended yourself until your throat was dry, and still they didn't believe you. You tried to argue your way into acceptance, and still they rejected you. But then there were times you stayed quiet, times you didn't respond, times you just waited. And later, God turned the very thing they mocked you for into the very thing he blessed you with. That is the reward of silence. And silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. Silence says, I will not lower myself to fight at this level because my destiny is higher than this battle. Silence says, I could say something, but my peace is worth more than my pride. Silence says, I refuse to waste my words on people who cannot comprehend my worth. And when you walk in that wisdom, you discover that silence protects you from traps the enemy set. Because sometimes the bait is not temptation, it's conversation. He doesn't always come with temptation to sin. Sometimes he comes with temptation to talk. And if he can get you talking when you should be silent, he can drain your energy, rob your focus, and derail your progress. And when you learn to stay silent, you also learn to discern. You begin to recognize when to speak and when to hold back. Because silence is not about never speaking, it's about knowing when to speak. It's about having the maturity to wait for God's timing, the wisdom to say less, and the discernment to recognize that some conversations are beneath your calling. Every word you don't speak is a word you save for where it matters most. And when God releases you to speak, your words will carry weight, because they weren't wasted on battles that didn't matter. And stay silent, because silence prepares you for the blessing. Imagine stepping into a room God has opened for you, carrying bitterness from every argument you fought. Imagine holding on to resentment from every accusation you tried to answer. You would be too heavy to enjoy the blessing, but silence lightens your load. Silence frees your heart. Silence purges your spirit of the need to be validated by others. So when you finally walk into the blessing, you walk in free, unbothered, unshaken, able to fully receive what God has placed in front of you. And some of you are being tested right now with conversations that don't deserve a response. People are baiting you, pushing you, trying to get you to come down off your wall of purpose. But remember, Nehemiah, when the enemies tried to pull him into a conversation, he said, I cannot come down. I'm doing a great work. Silence is your declaration that your work is too great to waste time with distractions. Silence says, I will not abandon my assignment for your argument. Silence says, I have walls to build, destinies to fulfill, and promises to walk into. And your silence becomes your sanctuary. It is the place where God strengthens you. It is the space where he renews your mind. It is the quiet where he gives you strategies. You don't just stay silent to avoid conflict. You stay silent to hear divine instructions. Because what good is it to win an argument and lose your assignment? What good is it to clap back and miss the whisper of God that tells you your next step? Silence positions you to receive revelation that noise would drown out. And then let me remind you, silence doesn't mean God has forgotten you. Silence often means he is preparing something greater than you imagine. Just because you don't hear him doesn't mean he isn't working. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean he isn't orchestrating. Remember, the most important construction happens underground before the building rises. God is laying foundations in your life that require quiet seasons. And when the structure emerges, when the blessing manifests, it will be clear why silence was necessary. And stay silent in the waiting, because silence is worship. It is saying, Lord, I don't need to fill the air with my words because I trust you enough to be still. Stay silent in the testing, because silence is strength. It is saying, I refuse to let the enemy pull me into his games. I will not fight with my tongue when God has already promised me victory. Stay silent in the darkness, because silence is faith. It is saying, even though I don't see the light yet, I trust that you are still the light of my life. And there will come a day when your silence will make sense. The very people who question why you didn't defend yourself will marvel at how God defended you. The very ones who mocked your restraint will have to watch your reward. The very ones who thought silence was weakness will have to admit it was strength. And you won't even need to say, I told you so, because the evidence of God's blessing will speak louder than your words ever could. And stay silent, because your silence is building a testimony. testimony. Stay silent because your silence is setting the stage for God to reveal his glory. Stay silent because when you trust him enough to hold your peace, he will fight your battles and give you everything you need, everything you desire, everything he has ordained for your life.